Welcome to Hague Talks, the podcast, where we hear directly from some of the Hague Talks community about how they're setting peace and justice in motion.
I'm Jojo Mehta, co-founder and executive director of Stop Ecocide International. We're an international advocacy organisation and we're working for one specific goal, and that is to add ecocide to the list of international crimes that we find in the Rome Statute, which is the governing document of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And at the moment, it lists genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. We believe ecocide belongs in that list.
I'm Janet Anderson, and I caught up with Jojo Mehta during Hague Justice Week 2023. In case you hear some background noises, we were at the very heart of the events during the week. Now, according to Stop Ecocide International, the organisation Jojo co-founded and now directs, ecocide is legally defined as, quote, unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused by those acts. This definition is being accepted more and more in international law, but I wondered if Jojo is also seeing conversations around ecocide maybe as important as changing the law.
Is obviously the aspect of damage to nature, but also how that obviously ultimately does affect us as people. And it makes us join dots. And there's something really quite powerful about that, because then it becomes not just a stick, but also a carrot, if you like, because the framework is then useful. And that's what's been really interesting talking with, for example, the business sector, the corporate sector, the investment sector is actually really interested in this because they want stability. They want to reduce risk. They want certainty. And so having something in place that kind of corrals things and steers them away from the dangerous edges is actually really important. And all of that kicks in before the law comes into place.
I asked Jojo how she approaches the campaign work, not just how to change the International Criminal Court's founding document, the Rome Statute, but also how people see the issue.
I think it's really important to understand that this is a piece that's almost kind of acupunctural in its effect. So it's very precise. You're just adding a crime to a list of already existing crimes. So you're effectively working with the system that's already there. But the actual potential for change and for sort of steering positive thinking that comes in with that is massive. So it's kind of deceptively simple.
Can you describe the kinds of reactions that you've had? I mean, I imagine right at the beginning, there's that sense of what on earth is this? But how has that changed over time?
It's changed a lot, actually. And I mean, even, I guess, 4 years ago, there were no governments talking about this. And now, there are dozens. So, the journey's moved very fast. I mean, for international law, that's very fast. So I think a lot of it is connected with the word itself, because it's very powerful. And I mean, the root of it, like genocide, it comes from the Greek and Latin. Genocide is, to kill a people. Ecocide actually literally means to kill one's home. And of course, our home on a grand scale is the planet. And it's actually a brilliant word to describe what we can see happening around us and what is now hitting our screens more and more regularly. And of course, there's always this sort of slightly bittersweet thing that goes on at our end, because the worse things get in the world, the more people listen to what we're saying. And we kind of sat there in the middle going, well, do we celebrate because they're listening, or do we, weep with them at the tragedy of what's happening? And actually, it's a bit of both, of course. But what it takes us nearer to is putting this in place and having this really feel like the common sense that it is. I think one of the things that's influenced that actually is that the grassroots mobilizations, while to some people considered very disruptive, really succeeded in opening up that conversation. And in terms of the climate emergency, for example, and into that space, people could then hear what we had already been saying for years, where they hadn't been able to hear it before.
If I try and understand that a bit more, then the networks that you built up, the different organisations who are engaged around this, that's what adds to this, and that's why it's gaining a hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of factors. So one is the sort of increasing rate of climate and ecological disasters that we're seeing in the world. So that's one aspect. One is the kind of, the reports coming out, the IPCC reports. One is the grassroots mobilizations that created a level of disruption that opened up the conversation in the media and in government. But then once that's happened, you then have a space within which to kind of talk about something like criminalizing mass harm to nature without it sounding completely extreme and sort of disproportionate. It suddenly feels proportionate. And of course, because of the potential breadth of what this will imply effectively, it has relevance to so many different sectors. And actually, that's one of the exciting things about doing what I do, is one of the things that really keeps me going, actually, is the fact that each audience is different. And so there's this sort of a sense of, okay, where is the relevance for this particular audience? And the brilliant thing is there always is one.
Jojo Mehta also took part in the Hague Talk How to Achieve Environmental Justice in June, and you can watch it all on YouTube. Here you have just a short extract from it, where she talks about her own activism and how Stop Ecocide International began. She started off by explaining how her own daughter reacted to news about the pressures we're putting on the planet.
10 years ago, my little daughter, who was 5 at the time, overheard me talking about fracking, and she burst into tears. "Mummy," she said, "I don't understand. If they're poisoning the ground, they must know they're poisoning themselves. They're going to die. You have to call them and tell them to stop." It was so simple to her, and it made me realise that it should be that simple to everybody.
Jojo explained how she moved from being what she termed an armchair activist to then becoming a real-world activist via working with the British barrister Polly Higgins. Now, Polly also took part in Hague Talks 4 years ago, and I was lucky enough to meet her too. She was then speaking at The Hague's Peace Palace, and she spoke about missing criminal law and the right to life that the earth itself should have, and her challenge to the fossil fuel industry. She was a powerful speaker, great rhetoric. Here's just a short extract.
Now, you may say that this is an epic David and Goliath journey, and I think it probably is. But it's also about justice. It's about truth. And it's about standing up and saying, if this amounts to an atrocity crime, then it must end. Now, you may say that I have vested interest. Of course, I am the lawyer who has been advancing an international crime of ecocide now for 8 years. But I am also pragmatic. If this is not made out as an atrocity crime, then I shall say so, because I'm the first to know from my own court practice there is little point in running a case if you shan't succeed. But we shall also be examining that if it cannot fit under existing international criminal law, then we shall make suggestions of what that missing crime can be.
Since Polly's untimely death, not long after that amazing talk, Jojo has carried on the fight. She's been working to get this agreed definition of ecocide and lobbying for ecocide to be included in the International Criminal Court statute. Jojo was speaking in The Hague on World Environment Day, which is celebrated on June the 5th. She told the audience that their help is needed to get the changes to the international legal structure to set peace and justice in motion.
It's practical, it's achievable, and the direction of travel is already established. This work gives me hope. Knowing that we can put in place a guardrail to protect our beautiful Earth and all her living beings from the worst harms means that there is hope. And my hope today is that you will feel this too, and you will help to drive this crucial global conversation within your own networks, your own sectors, and of course, with your politicians. Thank you.
After listening to this powerful speech, and also thinking back to Polly Higgins and her earlier appearance in The Hague, I asked Jojo what it meant for her to be in the city, and she reflects on the importance of Hague Talks. Here you are in The Hague talking about this, and obviously there's that clear, direct connection because you're talking about the potential for it to be a fifth crime at the International Criminal Court. But is there a broader reason why The Hague is a good place to have these conversations?
I mean, for us, obviously, the relevance of The Hague is very much the fact that the International Criminal Court is based here. And it's considered the sort of heart of international law. I mean, as we also heard today, the International Court of Justice is also based here. And so, there is something about the kind of, what is it? It's like the flavour of it or the kudos of it somehow that makes it relevant. I personally enjoy the Hague Talks format, that kind of very circumscribed but sort of clear and concise way of expressing, I think, is really important, not least because there are still many people who are not familiar with this subject. But I mean, there are also very practical reasons why the International Criminal Court, because it's also, it's where the crimes that are considered the worst crimes are listed. And it's also the only court where there is no immunity. So effectively, even heads of state can be prosecuted here. So there's this kind of sense that if you really want to get to the foundational level of saying what is bad and wrong, this is where to do it.
Thank you, Jojo Mehta, for shedding light on the importance of ecocide and making it a crime in order to protect our common home. Check out all the podcasts for Hague Talks. This first collection is around Hague Justice Week with some of the great people setting peace and justice in motion. And don't forget to like and share Hague Talks, the podcast.